Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Andrea, to another edition of MOYA Talks. We are in the middle of April, so we're doing our annual sustainability and innovation talks. And we have a special guest. We have Andrea Foss from Stephen Winter Associates. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Andrea, let's start talking about your career arc.
Sure. So I'm a sustainability director at Stephen Winter Associates. If you're not familiar with our firm, and I know we've worked with you all a lot on our accessibility side, for sustainability, we're actually in our 50th year of work, and a lot of our history has been working with a lot of the federal programs, including with the Department of Energy and with the Environmental Protection Agency, HUD, and other programs through the years. What was disaster resistance and hurricane-proof buildings in the 70s, which has now become resilience, and a lot of kind of watching the arc of as building science has grown, our firm and all these programs have kind of changed with them. But over the 50 years, I would say what Stephen Winter Associates on the sustainability side has really become known for is working on both the policy side, but also having boots in the ground. So we have a lot of clients who are helping with green building certifications on the new construction side, doing audits and analysis on the existing building side. We do commissioning, performance testing. We have a large passive house team, envelope and enclosures team. So really, many facets of buildings and what it takes to have low energy and low carbon healthy buildings. So let's see how I got into this. I've been with Stephen Winter now for 7 years. Before that, I had my own private practice, a small firm that was based here in DC, doing a very similar work. And I did that for about 8 years before we merged. I am an alumni of GW, so I've been here in DC for over 20 years now, and had a smattering of nonprofit internships, really focused on sustainability, and that's kind of how I got the sustainability bug, I guess you would say. I grew up, my dad he's retired now, a general contractor, residential builder. So kind of really grew up on construction sites, and then started having an interest on how to take that, apply my sustainability interest to green building. And that's how I kind of came to where I am, I guess.
Washington, D.C. is a place to be. You want to work in public policy, right?
Yeah.
Andrea, do you think the industry does enough organically without the external incentives to foster sustainability?
Without incentives, probably not. I think the incentives in a lot of the markets where we work, especially here in the East Coast, the incentives are really driving a lot of the high performance projects, whether it be incentives or codes, whether, kind of carrots and sticks, I think is driving a lot of the green building and sustainability programs that we see. If you look at other parts of the country where they don't have strong of incentives, their codes are further behind. There's less program uptake of green buildings. So, I think it does take both, those carrots and the sticks to pull the sustainability forward. But in terms of, there is a lot of education and resources that has come out of all of these programs that are available, so that the the design, construction, and operations community can really get on board with what they need to do to meet those requirements.
So public policy is really important to create these carrots and sticks.
I think it's critical. I think it's really what has driven a lot of our work from Boston to DC. We work also in Virginia. I'm not sure if you all do as well. I have very little work in Virginia. They have not as many policy drivers there.
Interesting, because they have quite restrictive policies in other senses in Virginia.
Right.
So besides your work in Stephen Winters, you also write their blog, right? Their sustainability blog. And I was reading and browsing through it for this interview, and I found a piece you wrote back in 2018 where you compare the different green building programs for multifamily. In your opinion, which one is the most complete, or which one offers the best cost benefit?
Sure. And I will say, I definitely am not the only contributor to the blog. We have many staff members who contribute their thoughts and expertise to our blog, and it's a depth of information. So as you noticed, or as you noted, it was that piece was written in 2018. So quite a bit has changed since then, hasn't it?
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, not least of which a pandemic between now and then. But the programs have evolved. All of those programs probably that I mentioned in that piece have also all had a new iteration that has come out. But I would kind of turn that back around to you or to the owner, to the client, and say, what are your goals? Because the way that I think it's important to look at any of these green building programs is really as an overlay onto how to achieve deeper energy savings, lower carbon, healthier buildings for the occupants. You know, none of these programs by themselves are going to get you that. You have to design and build it that way. But in terms of, so for cost benefit, you know, it's really going to be, what do you want out of your building? The cheapest is always, you know, right, is probably the NGBS program. There's also, you know, not as many requirements around performance testing and elements like that. Maybe the best bang for your buck might be Energy Star, because it is a, you know, by and large, there's no registration and certification fees that you have to pay. You would still have to pay your consultant for doing the testing and energy modeling, but you know, that is really focused on a lot of the best practices of building science, I would say, incorporated into Energy Star. And that's the program that Lead for Homes and the multifamily mid-rise, as well as the enterprise green communities, those programs are built off of that kind of Energy Star backbone, and then add in additional considerations for materials and health and sustainable sites, and you know, there's other important elements for a sustainable building. So as any good consultant will tell you, it depends. But it's always, you know, always good to start with Energy Star, I think.
Do you even keep up with the changes in policy and the benchmarking, all these different programs?
How do you keep up with it?
Yes, like you personally in your professional practice.
Time consuming. I will tell you a lot, you know, to your earlier question, what has changed? It's been rapid changes in our industry in the last couple of years, that shifting from a focus in design on, say, what does your energy model tell you is your % improvement, to now we're really focused on building performance. And how will that building perform 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later? How can we ensure that it continues to perform well into the future? That's a big shift. And so keeping up with how, you know, a lot of these programs are shifting in that direction. And a lot of the municipalities, you know, here locally, in other markets, are really moving towards these carbon neutral targets. And then kind of what's moving out of that is a strong focus on buildings. Buildings are often the largest contributor to carbon emissions in cities, especially. So it's kind of natural that that's why they're targeting standards. I don't have any great tips for how you stay up on it, because we go to a lot of committee meetings that are very tedious and, you know, sit on the codes writing committees and sit on there's BEPS task forces and things like that. But I do think there's a lot of industry associations that are doing a really great job of incorporating the information. Here in DC, we have the Building Innovation Hub, and they have a lot of really great programming. So if you haven't checked out their website and some of their, they're really starting to host more events as well. That's a great resource to tap into. They're constantly developing new resources as new program information is coming out. So here locally, that's a great resource.
So here locally in DC, we have the BEPS. Let's talk about it. For the lay people out there, what is BEPS?
Sure. So, and remind me, what are the building types that the folks who are on the call here all typically work with?
We do everything, but mostly multifamily and mixed use.
Great. Me too. All right. I can talk to that. So, BEPS, and everybody works here in DC?
Yes, yeah, we're working in DC, Pennsylvania, yeah, by large.
Got it. Yep. Okay. So DC has passed the Building Energy Performance Standard. That's what BEPS stands for. And, as I was alluding to, there's many jurisdictions around the country that are focusing on carbon targets, and they often are coalescing around what they're also calling a BEPS, or usually though a BPS, a Building Performance Standard. So every different city is doing it a little bit differently. So I'm going to tell you about the DC version, but when you hear about what New York's doing or Montgomery County, it's going to be different. But it all does start with benchmarking. You mentioned benchmarking earlier. So Building Energy Performance Standard here in DC, the short end of it is your building, when it is in operation, has to report its annual energy usage, and that is through the annual benchmarking. So buildings in DC have been doing that for about a decade now. It's due April 1st of every year. So we just had our recent submissions, and then using that data by building typology, they will come up with a median energy usage based on the Energy Star score. So all of the benchmarking is using the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So that median level, they're looking, so for multifamily buildings, currently the median score is an Energy Star score of a 66. And so anything that's above that is in compliance. Anything below that needs to improve to be in compliance, to get into compliance. And a building will have, this is kind of a special year because we have an extra COVID year, but essentially 5 years is the cycle. This year we have an extra 6th year. So the building will have to get into compliance in that time, anything that's below the median. So the base way to get into compliance is making a 20% improvement in your site EUI, or there's a prescriptive pathway, or if you're close to that 66, let's say you're at a 64, they have what's called a standard target pathway, so you can get from your get to above your 66. So that is like the nuts and bolts of what BEPS is. It's a line, a threshold. If you're below it, you've got to improve your energy efficiency.
We're talking about a major overhaul of buildings in DC, because
we're talking about, I'm sorry,
a major overhaul, major change, transformation required to meet this threshold, right?
In some cases, yes. So there's 20% is quite a jump. Typically, we've been doing energy audits for decades. Most incentive programs have had them for decades. A lot of them have focused on lights. That gets you maybe 3 to 5%. We are no longer talking about changing out your lights. We're looking at, for some of these buildings that are very low, especially buildings that are very low and want to, let's say you're at a 5, you can make a 20% improvement, and then you're probably still going to be below the median for the next cycle. If you want to get out of that being below the median, you've got to make some major deep energy retrofits, and we're talking about changing out equipment, going from gas systems to electric, that kind of thing. So yes, it's a big overhaul.
I know Stephen Winter worked with the DOE, but how realistic do you think it is to achieve this in 5 years? Is it really possible, feasible?
For every building, I don't think so. No. It's especially because there's still a lot of rulemaking that is ongoing. This is the first compliance period, so there's still kind of a lot of clarifications that are happening. So from my perspective, a lot of projects haven't really started. They didn't get going January 1st of last year. They have been sitting and waiting for more clarification. So it will be a challenge to make these levels of improvement. I think that there will be the DOE has a guidebook that is available that has all kinds of different alternative compliance pathways, and some of those are if you have major projects that are ongoing. I think there'll be for that, especially for projects that are doing these large retrofits.
We work with DC Green Bank. We handle their communications. So we're aware of all the efforts they are making to provide financing for compliance with BEPS. In your opinion, what are the market opportunities for architectures for A&A firms? And do you think that the firms in DC are prepared enough to understand BEPS?
All right, let's take your first one. Your first question was,
what are the market opportunities right now? Yes. What are the market opportunities?
Yes. So the market opportunity is definitely working with clients. So whether they're an existing building right now and they need to retrofit, or it's a new construction building, it's really important to understand this link between design and operations, how your buildings are actually performing. Probably the first thing I would recommend to you is go back to the past projects that you worked on, see how they're performing. What's their benchmark score? What is their energy usage? Are they above or are they below this median threshold? So then you can have some idea for what is it going to take to get to this higher level of performance. And do you work with a lot of existing buildings?
We do some renovation, yes.
Renovations? Okay. So, even within that world, we have some projects where we're doing audits with, tenant in place, and they're trying to make these upgrades all the way up to gut rehabs. So, it's definitely thinking about how what this linkage to performance, but then I think the other piece of this is really where we need to go, and where I think all of the policies in DC are going to start moving to is eliminating fossil fuel use. And so looking at how to electrify. So if you can't electrify now, plan for future electrification. So making sure that you have the space and that you can easily run conduit, or whatever it might be, so that you can more easily electrify in the future, if and when the equipment gets to its end of useful life, or new technologies are available, etc. So it's very important to look at and understand the implications of electrification for these buildings.
Systems. Let's talk about innovations and trends. You mentioned that Stephen Winter has a branch of passive housing, which is a growing trend in multifamily buildings. It used to be limited to single houses or single homes. What other trends, recent trends, are you more enthusiastic about?
I would say that passive house, I hope it's not a trend. I think that it is, we're using passive house on very large buildings, commercial buildings, industrial buildings, 600 unit buildings, multifamily buildings. I think that as we start looking at how to achieve the climate goals that we need to hit, we're going to be looking at passive house level of buildings. I think that's where a lot of our codes are moving in the direction of. We've been doing a lot of studies in Massachusetts and New York that are comparing like how to get their stretch codes, their incentives to basically match passive house, maybe without a passive house type certification, but like how do you get to that level of performance is what a lot of the codes are moving towards. So I see that as becoming much more ingrained with and being codified, honestly, with some of those levels of performance and targets for insulation and equipment, et cetera. But in terms of other, where the industry is moving, as I already mentioned, electrification is definitely the biggest shift in the industry that I've seen. So move so quickly since I've been in this line of work. It's been, just over the last couple of years, it is making its way into every code, every performance standard, as really the way that we need to start building our buildings and operating our buildings.
But it's not only about buildings, right? Because when you electrify, you also give autonomy to communities. You can create these hubs where you don't have to distribute the energy through the grid.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, for a long time, we've always been working on, kind of this side of the grid, the building side. But now, yes, we need to start thinking about this whole, where does our energy come from? How is it produced? What network of, energy providers are we part of? And yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it. The grid is a complicated beast.
Here we had an expert on demand energy production, which was fascinating too.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's there's a lot of really neat stuff that you can, as you start thinking about how to be more grid integrated and the demand response piece of it.
Right. Let's talk about your work at USBDC, because I know you were an examiner. How do you tackle that, and how, because it's obvious that you are not only brilliant, but you also have this ability to communicate ideas. So how do you use that to create material for the USBDC?
So you mean in terms of
You used to be a chief examiner, right, for them?
So I serve as a quality assurance designee for the Lead Homes program.
Right. So
we're kind of like an intermediary between the project teams and the GBCI reviewers. So our team, if you're not familiar with the Lead Homes program, it's a little bit different, very different, I would say, from Lead NC, where we are doing on-site inspections and performance testing, and then all of the information is fed through the quality assurance designee. So instead of using Lead Online, everything comes through myself and some other counterparts at Stephen Winter Associates to go directly to GBCI. But yeah, we do work with them somewhat on, giving them feedback, market feedback, and information about, how to improve their programs, certainly. Oh, sorry, I lost your audio.
Don't worry.
There we go.
I was mumbling. Andrea, I'm going to open the floor so the staff can ask you questions for the next 5 to 6 minutes. So please, people, don't be afraid.
I answered all your questions.
I know.
No more exist.
It seems nobody wants to participate today.
Oh, okay, I have a question.
Go ahead, Claudia.
I'm very curious because we have like all of these LEED standards. We then have now the WELL plus LEED standards in some of the buildings that want a certification. But then, you know, we have like all of these rules, and then COVID came, and then we knew that some of those dynamics changed, you know, because we knew that we were actually, for example, we needed more air flush. We needed maybe UV lights on the ceilings for air filtration. And so what do you think it's gonna change from that experience, like in terms of performance? What changes or what challenges do you see coming from that?
Sure. So I think that the challenge of providing adequate ventilation and understanding what is adequate ventilation in our buildings hopefully will continue to be a priority, because for a long time, I don't think we have provided or even paid attention really to what is adequate ventilation, and also making sure that that ventilation is continuing to work, you know, again, well into the future. But yes, you're right. Providing ventilation is inherently energy intensive. And so it's very important to think about how you can do that in the most efficient way. And so that includes looking at heat recovery. It especially includes making sure that all of that ductwork, if you think about the ductwork that is providing your ventilation, there's a lot of it, especially in these, you know, big buildings. If it's all central equipment, it's very big ductwork. And I will tell you, we have tested it. That building, that ductwork is on average 40%, has a 40% leakage rate. So 40% of that air is just going into interstitial spaces, maybe causing moisture, certainly not getting delivered to the units or to the spaces where it's meant to provide it. So what happens then is that those fans, those very powerful fans that are running 24 hours a day, are turned up. So more energy is used to push more air into that building, and then usually then causing, you know, having to overcome the effects of stack effects, because you're just, some spaces are not getting enough, some spaces are getting too much, and then it's just not even working. So heat recovery, balanced, making sure you're working with a qualified balancing company. We've seen a lot of balancing companies who are not using calibrated equipment, who are not using the right equipment even to test the types of fans that we see typically in residential buildings. But then really the only solution that we've seen that works for the ductwork is to just specify AeroSeal upfront, and plan for budget for AeroSeal, which is an aerosolized duct sealant, which gets kind of blown in from the inside to seal all of those kind of cracks and places where you're going to have the air leakage. And so that will help you have a more efficient system with better, hopefully, air that is getting to where you want it to go.
I have a question from Paola, but I just lost it in the chat. One second. I saw it appearing. Okay, Paola asked, Paola is our CEO, how do you see the solution and demand for apartment or condo owners who own electrical cars to charge their vehicles?
Yeah, so how much EV parking, basically?
Yes, basically.
I think that 100, I've heard anywhere from 20 to 30% is a good number to plan for, and so that's kind of aligned with what you have here. But yes, the increasing demand that is coming quickly. A lot of what we're also seeing is owners who are planning like future ready, so that you can easily run the conduit, but maybe not providing all of the chargers now. But especially if you're doing the work, you know, a lot of the hard part can be getting through, you know, in existing parking garages and drilling through existing infrastructure. So, you know, as much as you can plan ahead to run, you know, have chaseways where you can run the conduit later, then you don't have to do that very expensive retrofit later. So yeah, 20 to 30%. That's what I've been hearing.
People, any more questions for Andrea? Pablo has a question. Please go ahead, Pablo.
Hi, Andrea. This
Hi
is
there.
gonna be after your great talk. Thank you very much, and especially because of all your experience, and you've been studying the field for such a long time that you really are into everything we need to know. But I'm asking a more philosophical question.
All right.
That Rodrigo might like. In a don't look up world scenario, is more technology and more specialization and more artificial materials solving for sustainability problems the path to real sustainability? Shouldn't be putting as much effort in I don't know, taking away most of the things that we depend on and maybe living without them. So half the effort should be there. What do you think about that?
Is this can I summarize your question? Is it, would conservation be better suited than trying to apply advanced technology?
Yeah, or maybe half and half. Start to understand, are there local adaptations to climate available before we start insulating everything and air conditioning everything and jumping into our cars and that are electrical now, etc., etc. So it shouldn't be. Christopher Alexander, which was a great thinker, passed away last month, and he started a very technologically optimistic guy in the 60s, and he ended up publishing a pattern language, which is go back to everything we did in the past, where we adapted to our conditions, and we suffer them to a long degree. I know the heat in summers and the cold in winters here in Buenos Aires when I was younger. So my point is, since for people in the field, shouldn't there be like a 50% of the effort going more into that direction?
Adaptation. It's an interesting question, and I think what is unique about our situation now is that it's happening so fast, and not all civilizations did adapt. You know, a lot of them they lost their fields and they couldn't survive. There is certainly a cost to added insulation. You know, there is embodied carbon. There is a cost to the refrigerants that go into all of our air conditioners. I think what we're doing now is hopefully applying that technology more correctly and better. And we know how to do it better. With a lot of the.
What about sorry, just to finish? What about a real standard like passive house in Germany, which is relentless? You get ugly, boxy houses with small windows and lots of insulation, but there's zero loss of temperature from the inside to the outside.
Sure.
So I think we're not. No, we have embraced. I came to Washington 20 years ago, and we still did a lot of punched openings because traditional architecture was more in fashion. But now we go back to embracing everything is glass, which is beautiful, and we like to do it. But we know that there is a trade-off, no? Even with 3 layers of glass and whatever you put inside there. So
yes, I think there's going to be some kind of moderation that is necessary, right? Like I don't know that going all the way to all the passive house standards is what we need to do, but I do think we have gone way too far on the other end of too much glass. I agree, glass is beautiful. We know that it is important for human health. But when I go past a lot of buildings, they have the blinds down. It's too much glass.
yes.
And it's you know, you need to we need to find a happy medium, I think.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. We really appreciate your time, your effort, and your fantastic answers.
Yes, I thank you for having me. This was fun to just kind of play off each other and be able to talk more. I hope that we get an opportunity to work together.
Excellent. That'll be great. And I hope you enjoy your holidays.
Thank you. Yes.
And you rest.
Looking forward to it. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.